Hello, everyone. I'm Shauna Sanford.
And I'm Attorney John Redmann. Welcome to the special 2013 election edition of Power of Attorney. Tonight, we are changing our regular format to concentrate on the important November elections. You will decide who will become the next judge for New Orleans Traffic Court, and the candidates vying for your vote are our guests.
We are pleased to welcome Attorney Stephen Jupiter, a Democrat who's been in private practice since 1997. He is a member of the Orleans Parish Democratic Executive Committee, and he is the brother of Civil District Court Judge Claire Jupiter. Attorney Clint Smith is also a Democrat who's had a private practice as well for many years, and he served as Judge Pro Tem in Traffic Court in 2011 when the judge in that position passed away. Now, a little bit of information about tonight's program. The candidates will be given 1 minute each for opening and closing statements, approximately 1 minute to answer questions, and time will be allotted for brief rebuttals. During the second half of the show, the candidates will be allowed to question each other.
Thank you for being here. We used a coin toss to determine which candidate would go first, and Attorney Stephen Jupiter won that toss. You may begin.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you for inviting us on the show. It's a great opportunity to let the public know about our platforms. My name is Stephen Jupiter, and I've been an attorney for 17 years. I come from a very big family. I'm the 11th of 12 children, born to Clarence and Ramona Jupiter. And growing up in a big family, I learned a lot about the values of commitment to family and the community. I'm married. I have 2 daughters. My wife's name is Tanya Rhodes Jupiter. I've been practicing law for 17 years, and throughout those years, I've represented individuals, small businesses, municipalities, and governmental agencies, representing plaintiffs, representing defendants. And I think this experience has given me a good sense of trying to understand the different 2 perspectives. I committed to community service, and I currently volunteer with the Juvenile Court Conflict Attorney Panel. I'm running for this office because I want to change, make a difference in the traffic court experience for the everyday people who are affected by the decisions made there. As your judge, I will ensure that the traffic laws are followed and that justice is dispensed fairly.
And we're going to get a little bit more about those details in just a moment. Attorney Smith.
Yes, I too am very grateful to have this opportunity to appear this evening. First, I want to say this is a very important election. A lot of people don't really understand that most of the changes that really occurred locally occur through these local elections. So we really urge everyone to go out and vote. Again, my name is Clint Smith. I too am a candidate for traffic court judge. I am married, Dr. Cheryl Sutton Smith. Her family is a long-term family who has been associated with Dillard University. I am running, I was, as you noted, appointed by Justice Burnett Johnson, approved by the Supreme Court, to serve as Judge Pro Tem. And what that means was that upon the unfortunate death of Judge Dennis Donnell, I had the opportunity to serve full-time in traffic court as a sitting judge. I am the only candidate who has served as a judge in traffic court. And what I discovered was that we really need to, as judges, do more for the community, to reach out into the community, because there are a lot of people who don't understand what the laws, rules, and statutes are. So I'm looking to take the judiciary from the bench back into the community so that we all can understand and make traffic court run and much more efficient and effective for all of us.
Okay,
Thanks.
all right.
Thanks.
Time to get into the questions.
Yes,
Are you
ma'am.
gentlemen ready?
Sure.
Okay, well, Attorney Jupiter, we'll start with you. Expound a little bit more on why you want to become the next traffic court judge.
I want to become the next traffic court judge because I believe there's some issues down there that affect people that are affected by the decisions made there, as well as the people who are looking for a judge to protect public safety. You know, traffic court is about public safety, but it should come about with ease, accessibility, and measured accountability. We have to be more accessible to the general public, and it should be easier for them to be able to take care of their tickets. Measured accountability means that sometimes for minor offenses, the punishment should not necessarily be an excessive fine, but people should have an opportunity to do community service if they're unable to pay the fine.
Attorney Smith, you talked about community and court and merging the 2 in some respects. Expound a little bit more about that and why you want to become the next traffic court judge.
Absolutely. Again, during the time that I was there, what I noted was that a lot of people who came to court really didn't understand what the laws, rules, and statutes were. And I found that quite quite bothersome because I think traffic court, unlike civil district court and criminal court or the other courts, is really the people's court. Individuals who come to traffic court come without representation. The only time you definitely need an attorney in traffic court is when you have a DWI or a DUI. Other than that, you represent yourself. So we need to make sure that traffic court is accessible, that it's efficient, that it responds to the people's needs, because it is the people's court. And I really want to go back into the community, the churches, the neighborhood associations, the community centers, and really help to educate and empower our community through outreach and education.
Okay. All right, well, let's go to the next question. This question goes to you,
Yes.
Mr. Smith. Why should voters support you instead of your opponent?
I really think that, with all due respect to Mr. Jupiter, that my experience, not only on the bench, in addition to traffic court, I've served also as an ad hoc judge in juvenile court and as an administrative law judge during the Morial administration. And I think the collection of experiences that I've had as a judge, as well as my life experiences, and I think we are a product of our life experiences, actually has better prepared me to serve in this position and to make the necessary changes and reforms that I think we need to really address in traffic court.
Okay. Mr. Jupiter, why should voters consider supporting you instead of your opponent?
Well, experience is important. It's not the only thing that's required. And, you know, as lawyers practicing for 17 years, I definitely have lots of courtroom experience. And I think that courtroom experience is just as valuable as having judicial experience, because as an attorney, it's your job to inform the judge of what the law is and try to argue to show that this law should be applied to the facts of your case. I'm gonna tell you, growing up here in New Orleans, I'm born and raised right here in New Orleans. And you know, I've lived in the 7th Ward, I've lived in the 9th Ward, I've lived in various parts of town. I've caught the bus to Canal Street, I've walked the streets in New Orleans. I know New Orleanians. And I think growing up here has prepared me to really understand the needs of this community.
And so when it comes to dealing with traffic court, what are the, say, 2 top most pressing issues that you would want to address first if elected?
Efficiency and user, making it easier for the people that have to come there.
And tell us how you would go about doing that.
Yes, updating the technology. People should be allowed to be able to pay their tickets online or on the telephone. I think that if you innovate the technology there, that it would make it a little bit easier for people. It's hard to go down there in the park, and I think that if we make it a little bit more efficient for people to use it, then we could eliminate the need for so many cases each year.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I would agree that the technology is a critical piece that needs to be addressed as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, I don't know how much direct control I would have as a judge. I know we work as a collaborative to try to get those things accomplished. But in the meantime, I think it's important to get back out into the community. And I noted that because I've been doing it for many, many years. I too have been in the city for over 30 years, been very active in civic as well as community outreach, and having had an opportunity to interact with many, many people in the city over 30 years. I too feel like I have my fingers on the pulse of what's going on here in the city. And I think that it really is a critical piece to really get back out into the community. And I was, from the very beginning, I noted, again, from sitting on the bench, that is a very, very pressing need. When you have people who come in who make arguments on issues and then realize that the arguments they're making, where the law has changed or the rules have changed, or they don't really understand how the process works, we can get out and start doing that right away. I can go into the schools, I can go into the community centers, churches, and address those issues right now in the meantime.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Assuming you are fortunate to be elected by our voters,
Yes.
once your boots are on the ground, right after you start, what's the first steps you're going to take, practical steps you're going to take?
First practical step is to be into 1 or 2 high schools probably within the first several weeks. And I say that because during the time, again, sitting on the bench, I had these young kids who came before me, and they were charged with DWIs or DUIs. And first of all, many of them then didn't realize there was a difference in a DWI and a DUI. One is driving while intoxicated, one is driving while under the influence. So when I would let them know that the fines and penalties and attorney's fees are between $4,000 and $5,000, and that you might have your license suspended, you'd be difficult to get into undergrad or graduate or even community colleges, they would look at me and say, I wish someone had told me. So I see that as such a critical need. In the meantime, while we're trying to address some of the larger issues, we need to get back into the community and again, help to empower our community through outreach and education. So that's really what I want to do.
Okay. Mr. Jupiter, if you get the nod from the community and they elect you, boots on the ground, first days in office, what are some practical
Boots on the
things?
ground is to first meet with the judges there and trying to work out budgetary issues so that we can allocate some money in improving the efficiency of traffic court. I think it's very crucial that we address that first and foremost. Right now, it's just too difficult for people that have to miss work and come down there multiple times to handle a ticket. I think initially we need to figure out a way, how can we update and improve the technology there?
And just as a follow-up, we're talking about funding issues as it relates to what you're wanting to accomplish?
That's, well, allocating funding. They receive a budget from the city each year, and taking the money from that's within that budget and using it properly.
Okay. All right. Well, our next question, gentlemen, both of you, I'm sure, very aware that just recently we learned that a traffic court bookkeeper was indicted by the feds, and it certainly is not the first time that this particular court has come under scrutiny and has faced some really serious problems. So what sort of safeguards would you put in place to deal with these issues that have come up in the past and going forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. It starts with the judge, and the judge being present, and not only being present, but the judge being hands-on and knowing what's going on within his staff, within the courtroom, and just basically paying attention to what's happening, so that, you know, ultimately I would be accountable for what happens as a traffic court judge. So I tend to be very hands-on and aware of what's going on in my courtroom.
Do you think there is a stigma with traffic court right now?
I think there is. And unfortunately, it's not always the blame of the judges. They deal with some serious issues with the amount of money that's budgeted for traffic court, but at the same time, you know, they have to be accountable, and I definitely will be accountable to the public. I will be transparent. Every dollar that's spent in traffic court should be public record, and the public should have the ability to know what's going on also.
Attorney Smith, the same questions to you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I agree that it starts with the judge. And again, during the time that I was sitting, I made it very clear that it did start with me. In fact, I got teased by some of my staff when I was sitting because they thought I was a little bit too formal. But again, what I was trying to stress is that I recognize that there are some serious problems, especially in the public, as to some of the issues that have been occurring in traffic courts. We definitely need to make sure that the reforms that have been put in place continue to be put in place. I understand that there are some independent audits now. I don't think that was in place before. I know that there are discussions now with the judges regarding how they will hire certain personnel. I don't think that was in place before. I was not able to participate in the en banc meetings, which is a meeting of all the judges, so I can't state exactly what was discussed. But I think at this point, there is a movement to make sure that all of the judges have some input in it. And I would definitely be a proponent of trying to get that done. But I agree that it starts with the judge, making sure that his staff understands that nothing such as that would be tolerated.
Okay, well, believe it or not, we have come to the end of our first round. We are at the end of our first round of questions. We have to take a quick break, but when we return, round 2 of our forum on the race for New Orleans Traffic Court. Plus, what burning question do these candidates have for each other? We'll find out when we return.
We can beat this. The spill in the Gulf is a catastrophe.
But we will solve it.
This is not a Gulf Coast issue.
This is a national problem that requires a national solution.
But what can you do to help?
What do you have to offer? Your voice.
Speak up.
Add your name to the petition
Demanding restoration and protection
Of America's Gulf Coast.
Sign it.
Share it.
Be the one.
Be the one. RestoreTheGulf.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the special 2013 election edition of Power of Attorney. Our guests today are the two candidates running to become the next traffic court judge for New Orleans. And John, you have the next question.
Yes. Okay. I want to follow up on the discussion of management of the court and who's responsible for what. And obviously, there is a stigma in the traffic court. It's been in the paper a lot. Right. In terms of management of the court and the way records are kept there and accessibility to the public, how the dockets are handled, do you have any concerns about those areas? And what kind of solutions are you contemplating if you are given the opportunity to serve as
Absolutely,
a judge?
John. I can tell you one of the most troubling things to me when I was on the bench, having been a student of civil district court. My first job out of law school was with Judge Revis Ortiz Jr. And
Great man.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the one thing that he taught me is to respect the law and to respect the community. And when I arrived at traffic court and realized that there was not a central database that I could pull up and see what the cases were, not only in my court, but in maybe some matters that were related that had been filed in another court, I was shocked. So I think we have to make sure that, first of all, the judges and the courts can talk to each other, because right now we can't. So I think it's very important to facilitate that piece, and I think that's a piece that needs to be done. They have started working on a case management system. It may be in place by the time we get there. I'm not sure. I know they're shooting for the end of the year, which will make it much more manageable to try to address those issues.
Very good. Mr. Jupiter, same question. What kind of concerns do you have about the way things are run in those specific areas, and what solutions are you contemplating?
Yeah, to me, one of the biggest issues is the money that's derived from fines, from court fees, and for bonds goes to the city's general fund. You know, traffic court could operate a little bit more independently, I think, if those funds were allowed to stay within traffic court. They wouldn't have to get so much money, ask for so much money from the city. And if that money was kept in the court, then the court could update the use, the technology, make it a little bit more efficient, and the operations. They could provide even more driver education classes that I think would be a better benefit to the community rather than those funds going to the city's general fund.
Let's talk a little bit about attorneys and the cost of hiring an attorney, because there are many people who come to traffic court. They may need an attorney, but they may not be able to afford an attorney. Talk with us just for a moment about the disparities that you see between those who can afford attorneys and those who can't, and what, if anything, you would try to do to bridge that gap.
Yeah, one of the biggest issues, and I would like to bring a little more equity between those who have attorneys and those who do not. Generally, if you have an attorney, it's probably a little bit easier for you to get in and out of there. The attorneys are able to go and talk to the DA or the city attorney and deal with either working out a plea bargain, or getting the fine paid. I want to bring more equity between people who cannot afford attorneys and those that can, because what's really important is that everyone be treated equally and fairly in traffic court.
But how would you go about doing that?
I think it starts with the judge, and if the judge is on the bench, then we're going to call the cases in alphabetical order, and when your case is called, whether you have an attorney or not, I'm going to explain to you. You go in the back and talk to the city attorney. If you can't work something out, you don't come to an agreement with the attorney, then you come back in here and we'll hear your case.
Okay. Attorney Smith?
Yeah, it absolutely starts with the judge and being able to sit on the bench, but also it starts with making sure the judge manages his office. And I start by making sure, again, that my staff, that they understand that everybody who comes in has equal treatment and equal access. Right now, you're right. If you come in with an attorney on certain cases, you may be able to get in and get out a little quicker. But again, it goes back to the education piece. Most people who come to traffic court have no idea what the procedure is. Mm-hmm. And again, unless you are charged with DWI or DUI, where you have to have an attorney, you don't really know what the rules are. So again, it goes back to that education piece, to letting the public know these are the rules of traffic court. Again, a lot of things could probably be eliminated or done much more efficiently if the public has some idea of what the process is. So that's why I think it's so important for us to get back out and also to help educate the public on what those statutes are, what those rules are, what the rules of traffic court are at this point. So I'm going to focus a lot of time on that. But for those people who come into my court, the staff would know that everybody gets equal treatment, as well as the assistant city attorney who is assigned to the court.
Next question.
Yes.
What's your take on the number of cases on the dockets in that courthouse versus the number of judges? The Bureau of Governmental Research has made an argument that there are too many judges and a single judge can handle it. Other critics, including judges and other very respected lawyers and judges, disagree. Where do you stand on that?
I would love to have members of the BGR come and sit in the court with me. Again, when I was on the bench, there was not a lack of cases. Trust me, the cases were full every day. And the problem that we run into, John and Sean, is that because of the inefficiencies that are in place now, you have new cases that are being filed every day. Every day, police officers are issuing tickets. In the meantime, those cases that we have, we can't effectively move those cases forward because either the subpoena didn't go out on time, the police officer doesn't show up, the witness doesn't come, because again, the public doesn't know that if you want to try this case, that you need to make sure those people are there. So it goes back to first getting the court that's in place efficient. If you remove judges now under the current status that we have, you're talking about having a mass chaos, because those judges, now that you have less judges to hear these cases, all of these cases are still being backed up. So we first have to address the inefficiencies of the system first. Plus, this is the fastest growing city in America. I mean, they say it all the time. So I think it might be premature at this point to reduce the number of judges and then in a year or two determine that we're at a point where we need to add them back. So I think we have to give it a little more time and work on the inefficiencies at this point.
Mr. Jupiter, same question for you. Do
Yeah,
you have
absolutely.
too many judges, not enough cases? Where do you stand?
I don't think that they have too many judges. I too, have done some research, and I've seen that there are about 150,000 cases that come in. That's not including the DWIs. There's another 1,500 or so DWIs each year. You have 4 judges, 2 courtrooms. They split the bench. Each one does the morning, another one does the afternoon. One of the problems I had with the BGR report was that the numbers that they're basing on with the caseloads dealt with numbers that were studied in 2006. And we all know that since 2006, there's been a lot of folks who have been able to return home after Hurricane Katrina. So I think it's a little premature to determine that based on those numbers from 2006 that we need to reduce the number of judges there.
Well, we know that the two of you have agreed that you're going to forego asking each other questions here, but I believe we have time to get in one more question. And Mr. Jupiter, this goes to you. Both of you have talked a lot about working with your staff and the changes that you would make to staff there. But in 2011, the Inspector General released a report that's been described as scathing, and I know that both of you are well aware of that. But one of the criticisms in that report, it says that judges give too much authority to their staff to dismiss or pare down traffic violations without consulting the prosecuting city attorney. Do you agree that that's a real problem, and is that something that you are going to work to specifically address?
I think it is a problem if the judges allow their staff to dismiss cases. I'm not aware that there were judges that allowed that, but I would tell you that I definitely would not allow that. Of course, when the city attorney, it's their case against the offender. So whatever is dealt with has to be between the judge and the city attorney. So I would not allow my staff to dismiss cases. I'm going to know about everything that's either a case is either dismissed or someone is sentenced to a fine or community service. All of that's going to go before me. I plan on being informed of everything that happens in my courtroom, and as well as the city attorney.
Mr. Smith?
Yes, I think first you need to understand that there have been some changes that have been put in place in traffic court. One of the major issues related to the money and the management of the money, and I think those changes have now been made, that the cashiers and some others have been taken actually out of the jurisdiction or away from the jurisdiction of the individual judges. But again, I think you have to really address the issue of, making sure that the staff understands that that's not under their purview. You know, the assistant city attorney does have the jurisdiction of those cases because they have to first decide if they want to prosecute the cases. But I think the public also needs to be aware that when they are consulted with the city attorney, that they are not compelled to dismiss the case. If they want to have their day in court with the judge, they would be told that. I would make sure they understand that. And again, I think, when I was on the bench, what I discovered was that if the people had an opportunity to voice their concerns to the court, even if we ruled against them, even if I ruled against them, they felt that they at least had an opportunity to address it. So I think we need to make sure that continues.
I cannot believe how quickly time has flown by, but it has. So, but before we leave, we are going to give you all an opportunity for your closing statements. And Attorney Jupiter, you went first with opening statements. That means, Mr. Smith, you get to go first with closing statements.
Thank you. Again, I really appreciate this opportunity. I hope that we have been able to help educate the public a little bit on what the issues are. First of all, please vote on November 16th. Early voting is ongoing now. I'm number 41. I don't always get that answer. I said I'm going to say that first. I am the only candidate. We started out with 8. And of that 8, I was the only candidate then. I'm the only candidate now who has served as a judge in traffic court. I have seen what works well, and I know where the changes need to be made, and I know exactly where to go to address those changes. I don't need on-the-job training. I'm ready to go in there day one, implement the changes that I can do directly, and to work very vigorously to try to put in place the systemic problems that we need to address. So, again, I think based upon my holistic approach, my life experiences, my judicial experiences, my legal experiences, 25 years practicing on the plaintiff side, defense side, as an administrator, and also in positions of attorneys and administrators outside of the legal system, that I'm best prepared to move forward with this position.
Okay, thank you very much. Attorney Jupiter.
Thank you. Yes, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to come on the show. It's been very, very helpful to the general public, I'm sure, to be able to learn more about the candidates. I'm Stephen Jupiter. And I would just say, growing up in a big family, that experience has really taught me the values of faith, hard work, education, fair and respectful treatment of all. And I think that these are some things that I will definitely bring to the bench. I've had a lot of courtroom experience going in and out of traffic court, civil district court, criminal court, appellate court. I've done a lot of different work in courts. And I think right now what we really need is someone who's going to be able to deal with the people that come into traffic court, and to be fair and to be reasonable in a practical way. We really have to take into account that paying fines sometimes is not the best way to serve the public. When someone commits a traffic offense, they have to be dealt with, but we have to look at different ways of trying to make them pay back the community. And I think community service and driver education are very important, and I think that those are better ways to pay back the public.
Gentlemen, we are out of time. Thank you both so very much for being here. We certainly hope that you have learned more about these candidates and that you will definitely go and vote. Election Day is Saturday, November 16th. And for more specific information about how and where to vote, visit johnredmannpoa.com. There you will find a link to the Secretary of State's website with all of the details.
Thanks for watching, and remember, your vote matters and every vote counts. We'll see you next week on John Redmann, Power of Attorney.